That's a day when we effectively go into debt as far as the Earth's resources go for the year. So it's the middle of August, and we're already in debt. And this is a debt that we're not going to get bailed out on because the Earth has limits on what it can provide through the environment. It's the day that more carbon enters the atmosphere than the Earth can absorb through vegetation. It's the day that we can't produce any more raw materials for food. So it's the day we reach that limit as well. And this has got grave consequences for climate and for the world's biodiversity. This is the consequence of the economic system that we live in. We simply can't ignore environmental limits. We have to live a sustainable way and recognise those limits. More than 8,000 species are currently at risk of extinction. We're burning fossil fuels at an unsustainable rate. We risk using them up. Sorry, it's not there. We're burning fossil fuels at an unsustainable rate. Not only are we going to run out of them in due course, we're going to, the fact we're burning them is causing climate change, there's no doubt about that. And if we carry on, the likelihood is that will be irreversible with grave consequences for humanity. So we need limits, we need to develop sustainably, we need a sustainable economic system. Let's look at some growth trends over the recent centuries. Population has obviously increased dramatically. Our GDP has increased dramatically. As GDP has increased, that's had a direct relationship with the amount of energy we've been using, and that has a direct relationship with the amount of carbon we're producing. I make no apologies for concentrating on carbon, because that's what I know most about in terms of environmental limits, and obviously it's a very key environmental limit. So if we were to continue to grow our economies, we need to somehow decouple those things from economic growth. That's population, the amount of energy we're using per unit GDP increase, and the amount of carbon each unit of energy is producing. Let's look at how we've done on those things over the years. Population relentlessly increasing. Even the most draconian policy that we've had to deal with that, the one in China, the one-child policy, that didn't work. Is anyone seriously suggesting that we develop more draconian policies than that? I doubt it somehow. Not in a realistic world, a humanitarian world. So the other two variables are the amount of energy per GDP and the amount of carbon per unit energy. Both of those have decreased slightly. We've got slightly better at those things. The trend in the US, the global trend since 1971 is that energy per GDP unit fell by 0.15% per year since 1971. It's not a very big improvement, certainly not fast enough. For the other variable I mentioned, carbon per energy unit, that has fallen slowly, but it hasn't for the last 2 decades. So we're not getting there. We're simply not reversing the question. So those two factors have never fallen fast enough in developed countries to offset the amount of carbon that's increasing. So carbon continues to increase. We're not dealing with the problem. We're heading for environmental catastrophe. Many of you will know Kevin Anderson from the Tyndall Centre at Manchester University, the prominent climate scientist. He said that the growth in OECD countries simply can't be reconciled with dangerous climate change. So we're heading for dangerous climate change if we carry on with economic growth as we've had, and we can't carry on the same way. So what can we do instead? The New Economics Foundation, in its report Growth Isn't Possible, called for a dynamic equilibrium economy or steady state economy. This would be quite a change, obviously. It would be an economy where it's cheaper to do the right thing and more expensive to do the wrong thing. So the old ways of doing things will become a lot more expensive. We'll be encouraged to do things in a much cleaner, new way. It would be cheaper to repair things rather than replace them. We'd lower our energy use, and labour would replace energy in a lot of situations. So labour would become more important in a lot of consumption and resource patterns. We need a new economic system that values these things. It values environmental protection, quality of life, social justice, and equality. We need a system that values these things rather than pure GDP, because it hasn't worked up until now. That's a big change, but I believe it's possible. Economic growth isn't a scientific fact or necessity. It's got so many downsides as well. It has made many of us richer, but it doesn't make many of the poorest people any richer. Or it does very slowly. It's simply not working. So we can and we must develop a new system.